Try to cover
Professional,
it.
very controlled. Okay, got
Yeah, that's like my life at this moment. I couldn't eat anything to control everything.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the other side of our life. Okay, we are online now. Hello everyone, welcome to Lunar Rhythms with Christeen Skinner. This is our August podcast. Hello Christine, how are you?
I am honestly, Rod, this is remarkable today.
Yeah.
I feel incredibly unprepared, but part of that is because I am so immersed in 2025 at the moment that when you say to me, "Oh, there's a new moon on Wednesday," and "Oh, right, are we in 2023? Where are we?" Right? Oh, yes, Venus. Okay, there's that. Yeah. Um, this is the natural plight of the astrologer because
Yeah.
you should be living in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we all want to do.
Mm.
But the whole thing of the job is always in the forecasting. So you're always
Yes.
ahead as well. So I've got a real clash. My brain is fused this morning. But I noticed that just as we're starting, the moon is just about to leave Cancer. It's about to get to Leo. Right? So
Yeah.
I'm sort of hoping that we will pick up some Leonine energy as we're talking.
Yeah, well, I agree. I agree. It's the truth. Like usually, this is the time, and if you're writing anything for magazine or for a special booklet or for something, they will start to ask you to do the next year forecasting or next 2 year forecasting,
Yes.
and usually the deadline. So we are gathering all the data for next 2 years, and we are kind of diving into the data. So what we think, what we talk, sometimes we'll just like totally forget about the moment, but talking about the future. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was just before we went live just now was the
Yeah,
conversation we were having, right? Because
yeah,
we're both of us talking about control, and you were talking about control of the diet,
yeah, yeah.
and that, yeah, which is really interesting. But the moon is leaving Cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh
we've got
yes.
the moon. We've got an anoretic moon just now, and there you are
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
talking about how you care about what you eat, right?
Yes, yes.
And although we didn't have time just now, I wanted to tell you a funny story about a meal from last night,
That,
right?
that that's shared. That's shared, please.
Well, this was, with the benefit of hindsight, because we know, about the Sun Venus this weekend and what have you.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, Michael has been ill for a very long time, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
never once has he asked for a sherry, a glass of wine, not,
Uh-huh.
because we're just dealing with his illness. But
Yeah.
at dinner last night, and I won't bore you with the whole of it, but at dinner last night, I had a bottle of wine beside me, and he suddenly said, which is so unlike him. So, I mean, even when life was running smoothly, he would never have used this sort of language. He said, and I was completely taken aback, right?
Yeah.
But he suddenly said he wanted to taste it, and it was not a fancy wine or anything. It wasn't the kind of wine we would have drunk when we were both of us sharing a bottle. But
Mm.
suddenly this Sun Venus thing really kicked in. And
Oh.
it's extraordinary when you think where Venus is, and then I know his chart, of course. Anyway,
Yeah.
he had a little sip of it, said he thought it was a bit sour. And why was I not drinking a better wine? And I was like, I was just really amazed. But anyway, after that, he then went on to have a conversation with one of the carers, and they were giggling and joking for the best part of an hour in the way that hasn't happened for, I don't know,
Oh.
3 years. And so this weekend has been for me quite remarkable. That wasn't the
Mm.
only thing that made it remarkable. That was the best bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other things, maybe not so much.
Yeah. Well, I think during this moment, I think if I have a similar situation because after operation, I'm on a special diet. So was the beginning for first 2 weeks. Now it's coming to the nearly third week now. So the first 2 weeks, I'd be very very careful for what I'm eating. But now I'm just like I started thinking from over the weekend. I've been invited to a barbecue, and they say, "What can you eat?" I was like, look at everything. I was just chewing that salad. I said, I enjoy this salad, and I really taste every single vegetable from the pepper. I really don't eat it before. I said, oh, I can taste it. It's a very delicious. It's funny. It's funny, but it's like the sun Venus. We really it make us to enjoy the life no matter what's happened. Like I can only have salad. I see other people have pork loin and have sausage bomb or something. I used to be, oh my God, I wish I can eat that. But I just look at my plate with salad and I enjoy it.
Well, the other thing yesterday was I had a conversation with a colleague in the States who happens to be a Leo, right? And we're the same sort of age group. And she said to me about this particular Venus star point. She said, all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen, I don't remember so much written material about it. It's the big story. It never was before. And I was saying, well, I think that's partly to do with the degree that it's happening at, because it's happening, 21 degrees of Leo, where many of us, my age group, we've got Pluto there. And so we're making a big deal out of it, because the Pluto and Leo people, well, if you go back to the generation before us, Pluto and Cancer, they went through war, they went through all sorts of disaster. They didn't feel the need to do self-help books or explore it. I'm not saying that was right or wrong. I'm just saying they didn't feel that need. A lot of the Pluto and Leo people, and their crises are all full-scale Shakespearean dramas. And then suddenly there's this Venus star point, and it's elevated yet again, right? To being something huge. Now, actually, I was involved in 2 meetings this weekend, both of which I have to say were really unpleasant, because both of them involved challenging financial stuff, right? The Sun Venus thing. And the challenge was actually all about control, right? And it was, in neither case would I say that it was a convivial or happy meeting. Actually in both cases it hasn't had a happy outcome either. So it's very interesting how this particular Sun Venus is working. But of course now Venus is going to fade from the sky for a bit, right? Before she reappears. So I'm thinking that time when she's gone is I would like to think it's going to be a healing time, right? Have the emergence, not necessarily of everything being brand new, right? Because that's not always the best thing, right? Emergence of a different energy.
I think this whole period, the Venus retrograde period, and then it changing the position, move now is conjunct with the sun, and now move before the sun. So we were rising before the sun soon after, and this might going to change the whole atmosphere. But another thing happened this week is the Wednesday, the new moon, the Wednesday, and it sounds like it could bring some very different energy. What do you think?
Well, it's fascinating. As you know, I had to quickly draw the chart before we were having this conversation. But I was looking at it and seeing that, well, obviously Uranus is part of the picture, right? And if Uranus is part of the picture, then you've got a political step change, right? So you've got really strong, opinionated people, and we've got a Leo new moon. This is not the best time for harmony or arbitration. It's a row waiting in the wings. And of course, Mercury is going to go retrograde in just over a week's time, so the situation is going to get a lot muddier. But if you look underneath it all, Pluto is still sitting on that Mars-Saturn midpoint. And that I think, the whole patterns in the sky are always interesting. We're just leaving, the node is moving away now, but we have had Pluto squaring the nodes, right? Which has been really quite threatening
I agree.
At every level, from the fires to the volcanoes to the storms to all of that. That's been really difficult. Now we have this settling down. We have to have an agreement about clearing up, right? So you see that we need Virgo, right? You know what Virgo always needs? Virgo always wants time to assess the situation before they work, right? Right? The Leo bit says, I haven't got time for any of that, right? We're going to, and So I think it's going to be quite tricky. Again, just before we came online, I didn't know, but the guy from the drummer from Fleetwood Mac actually owned a restaurant that was destroyed in the fire.
Yes.
Now, not his home, but the restaurant and the livelihoods of people there. And he was apparently Oprah Winfrey has been turned away from a shelter there. She wanted to go in and film. And they're saying this is not the time for that now. And they're worried that there's going to be a land grab, right, of that area. People coming and saying that, we can buy this up cheaply now because it's charred, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah.
And the guy was saying we have to take a longer view and look charitably and sensitively to the needs of the people, which I think that's what this new moon is about, because it is going to be challenging, because you're going to have people who say we have to do this now, right? And you've got the Virgo people who say, just a minute, we have to do a risk assessment here. We need to do this proper planning. And maybe that's why Mercury needs to go retrograde in Virgo. Right? If we don't see it as a problem, but we see it as a solution, and perhaps it is. Meanwhile, of course, Pluto's on that Mars-Saturn, right? And Mars-Saturn that's a brick wall, right? And Pluto's saying, I'm coming through, knocking you down. So there's a lot of resistance in the air.
Yes. Well, I really want to come back to the Mercury retrograde. I feel like maybe for the beginner, maybe we should talk about a little bit about that. But before, because you mentioned about the Mars, I think it was the Mars Saturn midpoint. Pluto was on it. And I also remember by the end of this year, we are going to have a conference, and you are going to talk about working with astrology. And this is one of the techniques.
Look, I'm really excited about this. And I have to tell you, this was the cosmos that had decided this, because you very kindly said, would I come and speak at this thing? And you said, you can talk about anything you like. And I'm, because I'm so inundated with finance stuff, which doesn't appeal to everybody, of course, I was looking to see what would be interesting for that time of year and for beginners or intermediate or advanced, whatever. And then I chanced upon a conversation with Mike Harding, which was not scheduled. It just happened. And in a moment, I want to tell you about Herschel as well. We'll talk about that. So I'm having this conversation with Mike and talking about how important that working with astrology book was for me with Charles. And then this talk kind of arrived, because if you're going to work with astrology, then you have to work with all the aspects of it. The one who bakes the nice cakes for the birthdays, right? You've also got to be able to do a good meal and a nice starter. So when I do this working with astrology, I want to show how you can use these little, what look to be like little planetary pictures, but actually huge, right? And the harmonics and the astrocartography. And on that, just let me tell you, yesterday afternoon, a brand new client in Canada, know nothing about the guy, right? Brand new. During the conversation, he tells me that he had been very ill some years before in Thailand, and he'd had to be flown back to Canada very much. So as he's talking, I'm flicking through his astrocartography. Right? And Neptune, bang on the midheaven, and he'd been given a spiked drink there, right? Now, he hadn't told me that. He told me he'd had to be flown back because he'd been poorly, right? But I went into this Neptune on the midheaven, then started to look at the parans and what have you, looked at all that, said, that's very interesting. Were you in a bar? Like in a way, it was very obvious astrology, but it also wasn't for the timing. Astrology is beautiful. So I want to do that working with astrology.
Yes, I think that there's a lot of the technique like midpoint and harmonic and astrocartography. Now I see quite a lot of people dive into astrocartography because it's quite easy to see. They know the map, they know the planet energy. They can roughly work it out, but there's more underneath. But I think midpoint and harmonic is really worth to promote it because not. I think some school even abandon it, just like, oh, we don't need to talk about it anymore. It's
Well,
like, I feel sorry.
yeah, I mean, this is really sad because
Mm.
you have people who will say, I've got an unaspected X. Well, that's actually not possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's actually not possible. There will be an angle. Well, there are angles between any two planets. So nothing
Mm-hmm.
is ever unaspected,
I like
right?
this idea. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing is ever unaspected, but you might have to work quite hard to find out what the aspect is. That's your job,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So you can't actually say that my Mars and my Saturn don't connect with one another. You need to find out how do they connect, because right. So maybe they don't connect easily, right? Maybe you have to work very hard to get them to work in harmony.
Yeah.
But this is part of our art. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more we understand about fractals and mathematics and quantum stuff, the more we need to understand it's not just down to opposition squares and trines and sextiles. You know, the whole thing is rich, and it's several dimensions. You're only ever going to scratch the surface.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, so in December, Christeen was talking about the working with astrology include how to apply this book and also the midpoint, harmonic, and astrocartography. I want to come back to the basic astrology because the Mercury retrograde very soon, and you just mentioned about it. But for some beginner, they were always wondering what. Should we do this? Should we do that? You know, always just take it as a huge drama about the Mercury retrograde. But most astrologers would say, calm down. You know, it's part of the process, like you say.
Well, you need to say something helpful, right? Right. And the way I would view it is because you're absolutely right. You've got people who freak out, flip. Mercury's going retrograde, and I'm due to do X, Y, Z, right? So my basic line is to say, is it possible for you to avoid anything major on the 24 hours either side of the actual station, right? Because that's when it's at its trickiest, right? Because that's when the vibration is altering, right? If you went back over major companies in the world, Disney, retrograde Mercury, right? Things that you wouldn't expect. So you can't say, I'm not doing anything for those 3 weeks. That's
True.
That's absolutely ludicrous. There's other thing that's come into play recently is this whole thing about the shadow, right?
Oh yes.
Right, which has become the big, it's one of the big.
I know.
I mean that again escalates everything. But I think it's absolutely true to say that you need to be careful, as I said, 24 hours either side of the stations, and equally when Mercury returns to that spot again, right? Be careful there as well.
So I just while you were talking about, I just get a ephemeris out. You know, this old school astrologer. So here I use the GMT midnight time. So I think it's around the 23rd of August, right? They are stationary and changing the course around the 21 degree Virgo.
I'm just looking at it for you here. It's the 23rd.
Yeah, 23rd.
It stations at 1959 GMT or Universal Time on the 23rd, which is a Wednesday. So it's stationed on Mercury's day of the week, right?
Yeah.
So if there's going to be upset that day, you don't want to be signing papers that day if you can avoid it. I would say not to sign anything on the 22nd either, because you're going Mars opposing Neptune, right?
Yeah.
I'd be going back a day earlier, right?
Yeah.
If that's unavoidable, essentially you're saying that week, is it possible? Is it possible to avoid?
Possible.
But we're going to discover in the fullness of time that a lot of people moved house successfully and did, it isn't. This is not a curse, right?
Yeah.
If you were born with a retrograde Mercury, there's more chance you're going to slide through this with greater. There's also a question of what is it retrograde in, right? Because that matters too. It's going to retrograde in its own sign.
Yes.
let's hope we're all going to need a sense of humor next week, aren't we? Unfortunately,
Yeah, we do.
Mercury in Virgo, it's good. It should be playtime, summertime, should be good.
Yeah. And I think it gives us more time, like you say, give us more time to assess the situation and to work it out what we need to do for next cycle, for next Mercury Sun cycle, and also to more clear about the whole situation. But at this moment, a lot of things happen at just holding there, and we are not sure what's going to, which side going to go, the development of the world, even the world, or like in China, the economic was totally so different from us. Like we have inflation, they are getting to get deflation, what I got. Wow.
Well, yeah. I mean, and we could talk about that at length, but on a practical level, let me suggest that there's one job that you could do, right?
Yeah.
Which is, as Mercury is retrograde with Venus, right? This would be the time to check your utility bills, right? And make sure you've got the best energy tariffs for you, right? Don't do the ostrich bit and ignore it all. This is a really good time for, research, right? See if you can get a deal, right? I crossed out the 42 days of Venus being retrograde and decided that we were going to gut the office entirely and reorchestrate it, so that by the time we get to the beginning of September, we filed. It wasn't that the filing system was bad before, it was perfectly adequate, but it's not appropriate for what I plan to do for this coming year. So I'm reorganizing. So my GAN material, for example, is now going into the harmonics box instead of being purely in GAN.
Yeah. Lovely. So what is your upcoming event? Do we have the monthly catching up?
We do. We've actually, yes, and we've really dropped ourselves in it with something this time. So yes, on Sunday I'll be doing the regular monthly thing, which you can find on the Financial Universe website. Yeah. And we're going to be looking at company charts. We're actually going to look at the Venus retrograde, and a little bit with the lunar node that I decided to put in. That's for this coming Sunday. Yeah. The next one is going to look at eclipses and stuff. That's in September. But between the two, but it's not flagged on the website yet. But it's absolutely on demand. Is on September the 3rd there will be an Astro Crypto event. Right. All right. But that's because that's absolutely prompted by people saying, can you do it? Can you do it? Can you do it? So, and that one will look at Cardano, Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and yes, it'll be more intense. Yeah. So yeah, it's full on here, Rod.
Cool. So I'm so happy to hear that. So this Sunday, there is the financial course on the Sunday, and then on the 3rd of September, there is Astro Crypto. If you are interested, please contact the Financial Universe, right? Financial Universe website, and then you will contact Christeen. And that is so exciting because I know your Astro Crypto is always amazing. So I'm so looking forward to hear that. Well, thank you, Christeen. I mean, today we talk about quite a lot of things from, even we say we are not fully prepared, but we still mention about the Sun Venus and then the new moon, and also a little bit about Mercury stationary. I think, yes, for me, I think I'm 100% agree with you. Retrograde happens, Mercury retrograde happens about 3 times a year, and each time is kind of 3 weeks. So you couldn't say we do nothing during that time. But the stationary point, around the stationary point, I think that would, if there's ever one thing I say is most important and most accurate that inspire me quite a lot, is you talking about this 24 hours by the changing the direction, and that is key.
Yes, if you can just accept, I mean, it's more than just Mercury being retrograde. You need to look at the planetary picture around it, the declinations around it, the latitude. You need to look at all sorts of things. But if you just want a basic rule of thumb, just see if you can avoid things then, right?
Yeah.
That's all. You know, you don't pick up the new car then, right? If you can, yes.
Yeah.
Just all basic common sense.
Yeah. So just let me clear. So this is also because we were talking about when Mercury start to retrograde, so on the end of August. But also it also apply when Mercury finish its retrogression and the turn direction to the move forward.
Absolutely, yes, and very often you'll find that particularly because I work in the finance thing, right? You find that there will be a change, an absolute change in the trend, right?
Yes,
a very, very clear change of trend, and the one when it turns direct, if it's gone down, when it turns direct, you get the first signals of how far it's going to change going back, right? But it won't happen on the day. It's very unlikely happen on the day. It needs other triggering focuses, but yes, you'll get some. Yes, I mean, we could talk about that for hours.
I know. Yes, this could be a whole course. So if you want to know more about it, please join Christeen this Sunday because you have a chance to discuss much deeply. So thanks everyone for watching Lunar Rhythm with Christeen and I'm Chang. See you next month. Bye bye.